location. So I'd say those three things are the things I spend a lot of time with, and it's picking the right location. Every location is probably good for something, but not every location is good for everything. So if you have a wet location, that's going to be good for pawpaws, let's say, which like sun and like wet. Dry, if you have a really dry, poor soil and can't bring a lot of inputs to the area, I love persimmons for dry, sunny hillside. You probably have them if you live in Tennessee and have any kind of succession starting on your land. Persimmons are native. Apples and pears also like dry. Mulberries are kind of in the middle. They can very adaptable to all kinds of locations. Figs. Anybody here have figs? Yep. You get any this year?
Nope.
A few.
Nope. A few.
I got it back, and we haven't eaten, but there's figs on it.
Yeah. I mean, some. I got a a bowl or two. Last year I was getting a bowl or two a day, so it's just different years. If you have a variety, you're going to have more food every year, as opposed to putting everything just in one variety of plant and one variety of that plant. So mix it up. I focus as heirlooms and things that I get from other people. The Mennonites in my area have a lot of fruit, and we talk shop and we barter and exchange plants and ideas. Farmers markets, sometimes you can meet a farmer. Native or local orchards, can tell you a lot. But apples and pears, two of my favorites. I love the heirloom varieties. And do you guys grow apples at all? Anybody here? Yeah. Good year this year, huh?
Yeah.
I thought it was the best year so far for me. My plants have been in the ground for about 6 years, and I'm planting mostly semi-dwarf, meaning they're not really little and they're not really big. M111 rootstock is the most common, and it is disease resistant to a lot of the local diseases.
What'd you call it?
M111.
M1.
But most of the time, if you buy an apple tree, it'll just say semi-dwarf, and that means you don't really need a big ladder to go pick it. You might, but not, And some of them can get big. And also there's the grafting union. Well, we'll get into that, but we'll stay on the varieties. So pear, some of my favorite apples are Arkansas Black, Johnson's Keeper. I really like Horse for a little apple. For a summer apple, Summer Banana, which sounds weird, but there's also, there's a lot of summer apples, which are for fresh eating. All the heirloom varieties have different uses, and they don't look like your store-bought apples. They're kind of funny. I think this is old-fashioned wine sap, and you can sell it. It looks like black rust. You cannot wash this off. But it doesn't affect the taste. In fact, a lot of people like it, and if you cut in the apple, it's a good apple. It's not, the color doesn't go all the way in. It's just, the apple is generating skin that protects it from viruses and fungus and bugs. So you actually want it to look like this. You don't want to, if you're expecting perfect apples like the store, it's like you're probably I'm the wrong speaker for you. But your plants are going to look kind of bumpy. There's something that might have bit off that when it was young. I don't spray anything on my apples. I do add amendments in the winter, and I'll go over that in a second. But apples, pears, great. They like sun. They like a lot of carbon, so a lot of mulch. I mulch them heavy. I give them a lot of minerals in the winter. Kelp. I like azomite when I plant in the hole. I like bone meal, some kind of natural phosphate. And potassium, I use wood ash. I do use any nitrogen for pears and apples, like zero, or at least very little.
Heavy around the base, as big as they are, right to the drip line.
Ish, yeah. I mean, it just depends,
And then you just work the azomite and whatever else in the two.
Well, ideally, you'll put it in the hole when you plant.
Oh, well, yeah, okay.
And I sell plants and I sell the service of planting, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I can dig a hole." And I've gone to people's houses when they dug a hole, and it's like maybe the size you could squish the root ball in if you tried real hard, but it's like totally the wrong. You're not just digging that hole. You're pulling it out, some of the extra soil out. I use a breaker bar, or a tamper bar, spud bar, and I loosen the soil really deep and get those amendments deep, the kelp and the bone meal in particular. And that gives your plant such a head start because it's breaking through that hard pan that's in almost all the soil around here and adding the minerals that it really wants to grow. And just in a bigger area, you're not just dumping them in and just having them right there. You're actually working into the soil that's going to grow into the next 2 or 3 years. You're adding the mulch to the top so the earthworms are coming up, carrying the nutrients down, and then the roots are following the holes of the earthworms. So you're creating a biological active area. And then mycorrhizal fungus, which is really important. Especially if you're in a new area that's really biologically stripped, you really want to get the mycorrhizal fungus and powder, and you just inoculate the roots, and super easy, so worth it. So that's apples and pears, and I go through, some things I really do throw the kitchen sink, everything in the kitchen sink. The apples and pears definitely. Mulberries are more like a weed. They're great. I like the everbearing. I know there's a lot of other varieties, and I have a few I brought with me in summer. These are all for sale too. So mulberries, they're great. They're not every year though. I get them like every 3rd year. They'll be just a ton. It's like, where were you last year? I don't know. I don't know why they don't. They're just a little more wild. Persimmons. My hill is blessed with native persimmons everywhere, so I just let them live. There's male and female. You need both of them. You won't know what they are until like they get old enough, because you'll be like, why does this persimmon always have fruit and that persimmon doesn't? Well, that one's a male probably, and that one next to it, it's the same size, it's a female. And if you're around here, you probably have tons of persimmons on the.
We didn't have a good year, but we've got a lot of.
Yeah, it's not a good year. I had some trees that were good this year, and other trees that are always good that didn't have any. So it's just they have their own personalities too. Excuse me.
Mine fell at the wrong time.
Yours fell at the wrong time, yeah. Mine are much later. I'm about a month late on my muscadines and my persimmons. I don't know why. It's just, apples were like a little early. So, cherries. There's wild cherries, and there's wild cherries that carry a disease that affect a lot of cultivated cherries. I have a cherry tree from a compost pile somebody's grandpa had, and it came up like the babies came up in the compost pile. I planted it. It did great, and then it died down to the ground, came back up, a dozen different plants. I let 2 of them grow, and this year it had 50 cherries. I ate about half of them. Was away one day, came back, the other half were eaten by squirrels. But cherries, great. Just, they kind of come with some risk. If they die down on the ground, just be patient. The whole tree might grow back. So they're just temperamental. Figs, I love figs. They like really warm, but not necessarily full sun. They can actually tolerate some shade, but they want warmth in the winter. And the way you could get that is through thermal mass. And I like to plant figs, if I'm planting from people, pretty close to their house because they're shallow rooted. They get that extra warmth, and it's going to make all the difference between getting figs on a year like this year and not getting any.
So I would struggle with planting like some figs out in an open field that's getting a lot of.
I don't ever put them out in the open field. That's normally a lot of fruit. People put them out. They think full sun it wants hot. It doesn't really want hot. It wants consistent warmth throughout the year, and it doesn't really need full sun. I have mine grown where it's getting part shade, but yet it's close to my house, and it does really well there. And I moved my figs 3 times before I found the right place. They're easy to transplant. Figs are.
I put them under my peaches and they like it.
Yeah, they don't mind a little shade, yeah. I think that's a very big misconception with figs, that they have to be out. And out in the open field when it gets cold in the winter is the worst place to put them. So try moving those figs. And also stones, you could try putting, I haven't tried it at my house, but you can put them, thermal mass, rocks, something to keep the warmth. You might try, I don't use black plastic like that, but you could try something like that. But I do have some in my high tunnel, and they do great, and they taste amazing. I don't know why, but you don't have to have a high tunnel to have figs, but they're nice too.
That protects them all, keeps them more organized to heat through the cold spots.
It allows you to have that warmer season that you need to get figs. It escapes some of the frosts later in the year, so I'm still eating figs. It's going to frost this week. If I close my tunnel up, I could probably eat figs for another month. A few a day. I'm not enough to sell this year, but.
So you have like a row?
I have like 6 of them. I have a 90-foot long high tunnel, so that fills up that row. You know, so I'm training them to grow longer than tall.
Oh, okay.
So they're kind of growing out and up.
So are you putting just cut some wire up down to 64 volts?
No wire. No wire. Basically, you walk in my high tunnel. It's kind of a 2/3 is annuals and beds. So I'm on a hill. My whole place is opposite of this place. It's hilly, ravines, no place to turn. Like my dad says, there's no place to turn around a tractor because I grew up in Indiana on a corn. 500. My uncle and my dad farmed 500 acres and it was row crops. So my dad came, was like, "There's no place to turn around a tractor." You know, I don't own a tractor, but that's okay. I'm growing food that I eat, you know, and I sell to friends and neighbors and stuff. Elderberries. I love elderberries. They're a great companion plant too. I grow them around my apples and my pears. They grow fast. They'll produce. The trees will outgrow them, and that's okay because you can start more. You know, they're just a good plant to have around. They help shade some of your smaller trees. A lot of these that take a while, like the apples and the pears, can take several years to produce, and it's nice to have something that you're getting off that spot, that you've added mulch, you've added the better soil amendments, and you're getting elderberries, and it's not really competing with the apple trees, you know, too much, maybe a little bit, but not, and I keep them cut. They're easy to cut down, the elderberries. So you can cut them in half, you can cut them all the way to ground, they'll come up, you let your apple trees, you know, be the dominant tree, of course, and not get in the way, but you have a crop you can be eating in succession with, and down the road you're gonna have apples.
So you catch elderberries back every year, or every other year?
Whenever, if it's growing where it's competing with the branches of the apple trees, I'll cut that back as far as I think I need to. So it can be every year. I've talked to people that bush hog their elderberries, and I don't do that. I just cut mine on, in general, probably back a third every year if I had to average.
How close would you put them to the apple tree?
Maybe 2-3 feet away. Yeah. And you know, out in the wild, you have trees and things are growing around those trees. So in permaculture, I like to think we're mimicking nature, we're observing, we're doing what. So we're growing your deeper rooted tree, and then your shallow rooted plants can be around it. And with a lot of these things too, I like herbs, wildflowers, mints, things that don't compete with the tree, but actually benefit. And it seems like if you have a lot of bees and I have a lot of pollinators, you don't have the problems with worms and with the other things. And we can pass this around. Does anybody have a knife, want to cut this? Or Shauna, you want to help me? You want to cut people with some apple?
Sure.
Or, she's my assistant. You need a pocket knife?
Yeah. So I can cut my other finger.
Oh yeah. Here's one. I'm gonna try some. And this is organic. Oh, you got it. Nice.
I'll work on it.
Yeah. Oh, you can use that one. That one. Or, hey, Sean.
Huh? Oh, cool. Thanks.
And so what else? Figs, elderberries. They're similar in the fact that they're shallow rooted. They're easy to propagate. Both of those. So as long as you get one, I'm always buying more figs though, because there's always different varieties I don't have, and I want to try to grow them. If nothing else, just so I have more of that variety and I can compare the taste. I probably have at least 4 or 5 different types of figs. And there's always more. I mean, I know a lady that has like 200-300 figs. So there's a lot of varieties out there. I'm not going to grow. I don't have that much space because those are in my areas right in front of my house in my high tunnel. I don't have that much perfect spots for figs, or I'd grow nothing but figs. But
what's your best producing variety of fig?
I don't even know the name of half my figs. I couldn't tell you. And I like them different. You know, sometimes the red ones, the smaller red ones, sometimes the big green ones that fill your whole hand. I have one that kind of opens up and it's multicolored. It's really, really good and juicy. It's like eating packs of jelly. It's really good. Anyway, muscadines. I grow, that's what I first got into is muscadines. I have about 7 rows, about 50 muscadine plants. I'm a winemaker, and muscadines are great for winemaking. And I use the other fruit in with the muscadines because the muscadines have a lot of acid and they help break down the other fruit. So, and everything tastes good with muscadines. Apples, figs, you can throw it all in there for a minute with a crusher, and that's a whole nother talk though, home winemaking. But I'd have to bring samples for that, and you guys would have a hard time getting home. Passion flower. I'm gonna grab this over here. Have you guys tried passion flower? Who brought these today?
Me.
Can I pass them out?
I reckon.
Who brought them? Zuck Farm?
Yeah,
Buck
sorry.
Farm? Zuck Farm? Buck Farm? These
grow 'em.
Have you seen them? Has everybody seen these? The really pretty, you can pass them around, or every table, can we hand them out to every table?
I think you should.
And you could open the 1700s that are really the heirloom, the really good ones. You're continuing that same tree, basically. Their grandfather, you know, could eat off that same tree, basically, just planted in another place, growing on a different rootstock. But it's continuing that exact same tree. What was I talking about? Blueberries. Yeah, so I would always recommend never just one plant, you know, and it's good to get more plants anyway because we collect plants ultimately, don't we? As homesteaders and farmers, we collect plants, you know. So, blueberries. Also, people talk about acid. I've heard minerals, it being rich in minerals being more important than acid. And acid allows the plant to take up extra minerals. So, I really like stay away from potash with those, but I do a lot of, I want to say azomite and maybe rock phosphate and bone meal, that sort of thing. The green sand. Pine needles are great, yeah. I throw those around, but also I just go to the sawmill and get, you know, the sawmill get sawdust that's a little broke down, and some mulch.
Sawdust in the dirt or just on top?
On top. But I try to redo that every year. And if you had to add irrigation to one of these plants, out of all of them, I'd say blueberries benefit from irrigation. And I don't irrigate a lot. Like people, actually, my neighbor came up the other day and it was so dry. He said, "How do you irrigate your muscadines?" I said, "I don't. I've never irrigated, and I've never. When I plant things, I watch them and I do water them that first year. But I've lived off the grid, and that's the next talk. But so I really count on Mother Nature and also mulching and incorporating organic matter because it's making the area around your plant like a sponge. And once you understand that, you don't, watering's like second to that. You do that first. That's a have to improve your soil and capacity to hold water. And one of my favorites, last but not least, pawpaws. Who's never had a pawpaw? Oh, I'm so sorry. I ate my last one of the season just this last week. Like they're amazing. They're native. They grow in the wetlands along creeks and rivers. And I've always wild foraged for them, but this year's been the first year I've actually gotten off my little trees. I probably got like 30 of them. I mean, it just rained.
Pawpaw tree here on the dessert table, I think, is in there.
Yeah, pawpaw pudding.
Oh yeah, pawpaw, yeah.
Maybe a few left.
Yeah, pawpaws. Pawpaws are amazing. I have a lady with cancer that's buying plants, pawpaw fruit, and supposedly cancer survivors really flock to pawpaws because there's some compounds in it that prevent free radicals from traveling through your body.
What
So,
part?
Have you heard that?
What
Anybody
part
else?
of the plant?
The
What
pawpaw, the fruit.
The whole fruit
The
or
fruit.
just the seeds?
No, the fruit. I don't know about the seeds. Are kind of undigestible. They pass through you. And so it's medicine. And a lot of people can have allergies from cooked pawpaws, so you want to be careful. You want to have like pawpaw ice cream, raw pawpaw desserts. It doesn't affect everybody like that, but it affects enough people that you should be careful cooking pawpaws. Then I put down here some things that I've gotten good fruit off of, but it's my more challenging ones, and I don't really recommend them, but I talk to other people with a different land, a different situation, that successfully do that in Tennessee, and that's peaches, plums, and nectarines. I've just learned that my land is not cut out for it, so it's okay if you can't grow everything. I mean, it's good to try it. I would not, like he said earlier, the gentleman said start out small and see what works. I would start with 2 or 3 of all these, and see what works, and then focus on those. Like for me, it's apples, pears, persimmons, figs, elderberries, muscadine. I mean, well, most of these things are growing well for me somewhere on a dry hillside with poor soil. But peaches, plums, and nectarines are not, so I gave up on them. Mostly bug pressure because it's so hot and so humid, and the fungus, it's just really tricky.
You got 20 more minutes.
20 more
for
minutes.
Your off-grid talk.
Okay. Any questions about fruit? Where do I like to buy them? Everywhere. I bought them from local, as close to where you live as possible. I mean, there's nurseries hidden. Hidden Springs in Middle Tennessee. I bought a few things from. There's a lot of
Overhill?
not really for fruit,
No. Okay.
for native, but not fruit. Locals, farmers markets, Mennonites, me, you know, I would stick to somebody who knows what they're doing and successfully growing them. Yes, sir.
What's your feelings about bare roots versus potted plants?
Well, I grow bare root potted, but I bought bare roots. I like bare roots. I specifically don't like them if the potted ones that have been in the soil in a really fine potting mix, and there's no, you know, they've grown quickly and they've not. So a lot of potted plants are not good because they've spiraled around and around in the container. Now you can spread them out. What I don't like, the bigger thing I don't like, is the chain. You know, the Lowe's, the Tractor Supply, the Rural King discounted fruit trees that you come and it might live for a year or two and die, and you spend all that, you know, you got a good deal, but, you know, this is a tree that can feed you guys for 100 years, well, 50 years, whatever. And it's like, you might as well spend a little extra money and get a good plant and not get disease and not get the varieties that you see at the grocery store. Get away from thinking you're going to grow an apple that looks like a Gala. You know, I have somebody, oh, I want a Gala, I want a Gala. It's like, just, you know, you're probably never going to grow that in Tennessee. You might as well grow something that's going to be successful and you're going to be able to eat. So, speaking of eat, did everybody get to try some apple? No? Okay.
I have a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I'm from Florida, and I've been up here this week,
Uh-huh.
kind of looking around. So one of the things I've noticed here is banana plants.
I've never eaten a Tennessee banana. Have you?
It's ornamental.
Yeah, it's ornamental.
I think it's a fascination with the
Yeah.
plant.
Ornamental,
They
yeah.
cook with the leaf. That's
Just for
what
the
a lot-
leaf.
It's a lot of cultural
I
stuff.
think people plant them because it reminds them of being in
Do
Florida.
they produce?
No.
Oh, I saw.
It will be.
Okay,
No.
I was, everywhere I go, I
Good
see banana
question.
plants, and I'm like,
The closest thing that we have is bananas on this list is pawpaw,
Yeah.
which is a tropical plant, but it grows in North America. And they do want two totally different pawpaws. So pawpaws, if you know anything about pawpaws, there's selected cultivars that are grafted, but still, you still need another complete different tree that's completely genetically different. Pawpaws shoot up runners, so you may think you have one pawpaw tree, like you find it by the creek and never has pawpaws. That could just be one pawpaw tree. So you're actually going to need one genetically totally different tree from a seed to pollinate that one spot that you might have one pawpaw tree growing multiple trunks. So that's something to think about too. Yes.
Cedar apple rust.
Yes, you want good variety. That's the whole one of the main problems with apples. I did cut a lot of cedar down in maybe 100-yard radius. So if you're right under this giant cedar tree, stay away from apples.
So okay, because we have, stay away from even the resistant varieties?
If it's a huge tree, you know, I mean, I've seen people that ask me if they thought it was a good place to plant apples, and there's a whole row of cedar trees, and I just said no. Like, no, it's not the wrong place.
So we have 3 apple trees that are probably like 7 or 8 feet tall now. They're not branching out much, and they're definitely affected by rust. We're
What
trying
kind?
to figure out, should we move them? I think they're gold rush.
Golden Delicious?
Gold rush.
Gold Rush? Okay. I've heard of that. That's pretty good, I think. But I don't know about its resistance.
Yeah. Okay. So we're just trying to figure out, like, if it keeps growing but the leaves are affected, like, is that just hopeless? Is that?
You know, it could be too much for the tree, but I can't really speak for that. You know, some of my varieties do better than others, and I'm watching it. And some years, different varieties do better than others. So, what you might do instead of planting that one, if it's still growing, and you might just try a different spot, or you might cut some of the cedars down. That, you know, do you ever see that big orange growth on your cedar tree?
It's never.
Because it's around a lot, though. It's very prevalent. But
A lot smaller when it's dry, but it rains and then it expands and turns into this weird, figurey gelatinous thing. But when it's dry, it just kind of makes a harder spot.
Cedar apple.
But and then one of the main things is like grass. Like people have a lawn like this, they dig a hole or maybe auger a hole and they put in an apple. The apple doesn't want to be surrounded by grass, and you got a perfectly manicured yard with just an apple tree. is the complete wrong scenario to do a holistic or organic. You want a community of plants and mycorrhizal and fungus. You want to create an environment that mushrooms want to grow in. Don't even think about the apple tree, think about the mushroom. If you have mushrooms popping up in a rotten log and some wood ash and some wildflowers, you got the right spot for an apple tree. And so, you know, I'm not saying I don't ever clean around my trees, but I do it like once a year and let everything grow back. Not just grass, but suppress your grass, use cardboard, whatever, and get some wildflowers in there, some sorrel, and some just a variety of plants. Of course, my mind's always like bee balm. I grow bee balm around mine, mints, and comfrey. Yes, comfrey. Thank you. Comfrey's great, and that'll just help everybody. And you'll have other things to consume when you don't have apples. You know, some medicine.
Another question about the cedar rust. What's you mentioned you don't want your apple tree right below a big cedar tree, but what's the proximity, or if cedars have grown there? What's the?
For me, I try to cut down, you know, because I have 25 heirloom apple trees I put in, and I had some cedar trees, and I cut them out about 50 to 100 yards away. There's a few that are probably within 100 yards, but I tried to push it away where I couldn't throw a rock and hit a cedar tree from my apple tree.
How about the grafting?
Maybe twice. The grafting, that's a whole nother talk.
Well, because I know my question is just, do you have to graft it onto another apple tree? Could you graft it on a pear tree? Or
no, yeah, it has to be an apple tree. Yep. Now, it could be a different rootstock. You can change your apple tree. So if you have an apple tree that's doing well, but you don't like the apples, you can change that tree to a different variety. But that's all timing. You got to catch the scion wood, cut the scion wood, and keep it damp, and keep it in a fridge in January and graft in March, when it breaks out of dormancy. So that's a whole nother talk. I can't even begin to.
So if somebody has an apple that I really like and I want to graft it,
you can save the scion wood. Save the scion wood and find somebody that grafts.
You can even just graft on 1 meter, one branch.
Yeah, you could. Okay. I've done that. I prune trees for people, and I plant trees. And anyway, I pruned some pear trees. I love the tree on the. It was on an old homestead. It was a cool pear tree. It was huge at the base. I saved some branches, wrapped them up, grafted them in March on a few branches, and now I have that tree saved on a few branches, and it was really cool to see that branch was loaded with pears this year. I mean, the whole tree was, but that branch was, and there were different pears than the rest of the tree. So next year I'm going to order some rootstock and graft whole other trees, now that I know I like it, and change whole trees into that. So when you graft it when it's young, you're putting it together, and everything above that graft is that new tree. Below that tree is a different rootstock. So it's really cool. Yeah, you can do single branches in small spots. You know, if you have a lot of land, there's no reason to have 5 different varieties on one tree. But if you have a backyard, you know, you only have 2 areas, or 2 spots for an apple tree. You can have 10 varieties or whatever.
Grafting's hard.
Yes, sir.
Have you grafted pears onto Bradford pears?
No, but I've seen it done.
I've seen it done, but I just.
It works. Yep.
And
yeah, there's everybody.
Anything above the graft would be a regular pear, and it would reduce the ugliness of the Bradford pear.
Yep. You just want to be careful because any shoots it shoots up below that graft is going to be the root still. So.
Can I just make one quick announcement? Yeah. The kitchen folk, they're trying to wrap up, so if you're still hungry, over the next little bit, it'd be good to go and get a second helping because it's going to get put away. Anybody, just raise your hand if you think you're still hungry. I could eat all day long myself. No hands going up. Okay, I'll let them know. We'll put it away then. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell them all thank you.
Yeah,
I think there's a station over there. I think so.
So if we were interested, in the Knoxville urban area, we're talking about doing more food forests, edible food forest. Yeah, I'm really excited about it, but I'm asking, do you know anything about compatibility of different trees that you're currently doing,
Yeah, I mean, I experiment with compatibility all the time, but I like my apple trees closer by because they can pollinate each other. And I like my pears, different varieties in particular, next to each other. Because pear and apples grow in similar places, but I do keep my pears close to each other and my apples, in the ideal spot for apples and where they can pollinate each other.
And any that don't
I would say, walnuts, cedar and apples. Shade, you want to think about shade and the growth pattern of all these plants. You know, that's just something time and trial and yeah, experience. But you can ask me later. I don't know any particular. I mean, that's kind of a big question. You just want to think about how they grow, how the roots grow. Some plants grow deeper. Some would compete with each other.
Dave, I had a question.
Yep.
I was just wondering, what kind of pH do plums like?
I don't know. I don't grow plums.
Oh.
There are ones. There's so I put a question mark. I don't really.
Okay.
I'm not
Big
done
question
well
mark
with
to
these
me,
three:
yeah.
peaches, plums, and nectarines. In fact,
Really? Okay.
I think they're like neutral. 6.5 is what a lot of things like.
Seems to be the key. Isn't it?
Slightly acidic for most. Blueberries can handle more, so can muscadines. But I'm supposed to also touch on off-grid living because I live off-grid.
Yes.
How much time do I have?
About 8.5 minutes.
8.5. You want to talk about off-grid or keep? Yeah, okay. He wouldn't give me any time. I'm sorry. I'll tell my story real quick. I bought some land. It was clear cut. It had been clear cut before I bought it. It was like little pines and scraggly, no driveway, nothing. And I was broke, and so but I had a camper that I lived in off and on for years. And
How much land?
originally I had 14. Now I have 51. But
Oh, okay.
you stay in one place, you might accumulate land around you, which is the goal, right? But so I had a camper, which I always recommend. People say I want to buy land, I want to build a house. It's like they have no carpentry skills and they don't have any money. It's like just get a camper. Get a camper, and it'll buy you time. You have a place to live. You're out of the rain. Maybe you could put a wood stove in it for heat because that is one of the things I have for off-grid living. And I made some notes. So then I built, and I actually built something that I could park my camper under and live in while I built it. I was going to do straw bale, but I realized Tennessee, we get so much rot and so much rain, and I was just building slowly. I didn't do that, but it forced me to do big overhangs for my house. And I have a shed roof, and it has like 2.5 foot overhangs, 3 foot all the way around, which is awesome because it's passive solar. That means my shed roof faces the south, and so it gets the sun in the winter that shines in through all my windows that are south facing. On my north side, how many windows do you think I have? 0. Why bother? That's just summer sun. You don't need it. In fact, my downstairs is cave light. My upstairs is very light and airy. My downstairs is all concrete. My upstairs is all wood. So it allows me to have like two complete separate zones. My downstairs is great in the winter, sitting by the wood stove, storing food because it's low light, cooler, stays damper. Upstairs is, a little more moisture. Upstairs is really dry, airy. I sleep up there. It's great. It cools down in the winter. In the summer, because I live close to the mountains, so the cool air flows in. All my windows are casement, so it catches breezes. But I have the casement the right way to not catch a lot of the rain that comes from the west where I live. So they open that way to catch the eastern wind, not the western rain. There's just little things after being there and seeing it and living without windows because I didn't have the money. And I worked away for a few years and came back and would spend my money on my house. And so 20 years later, I got a house and it's functioning without normal electricity and stuff. So then I live off-grid, so I have solar. There's other options, but solar in Tennessee is the best for off-grid living. And rain catchment, for years I just had rain catchment, and I had goats, I had chickens. The NRCS did help me with a well, but I had to have other water options, and I think having livestock helped because they saw that I was kind of, I had done it for years too, so it's kind of like, you kind of got to be a little bit desperate, I think, to get some of these grants because they'll say, well, you have access to city water. At the time, I really didn't. I do now, but I don't get it. So I'm on a solar well now. And so they help me with paying for part of the solar well.
Do you need to have a structure before the NRCS will give you...
You need to be farming.
Farming. Okay.
Yeah, producing an income and show that you're actually farming. More than just pets. It's... hopefully things in rows. I think they like to see things in rows and fences in areas. And so I'm basically farming my ridge tops. But I'm also wild foraging also. That's more of how I'm using my land. But but I do gather chanterelle mushrooms, and I got a deer last year. It was a beautiful buck, and so I get to put it in my solar-powered freezer, which is nice. And with my apples, I'm cooked venison and wine with mushrooms and some apples. So
All from the farm.
eating apple pie. So I'm living the dream kind of, but it's been a lot. It's been 20 years of
The off-grid gourmet.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, but it's been a while. I mean, it's been a while. For a long time I just ate Little Debbie's and had a crap truck and everything. But so energy. I was going to talk about that. I like solar. Off grid. I don't. I'm not grid tie or anything like that.
You're not what?
Grid tie. So there's two different camps of solar. There's grid tie and there's off grid, and there's something in the middle. Grid tie with battery backup. But basically, I have no power lines going to the main power line.
Yeah.
It's just self-contained. I don't mess with TVA. They don't bother me. I don't bother them. For shelter, I like passive solar for sure. Build it to be off grid. Don't buy something and think I'm just going to cut the power. I have people say I want to be off grid. They got like a single wide or double wide, and I'm just like, that whole structure is built to consume energy. It's not built to be efficient and to heat with wood, to be passive solar. So start out with that in mind. I heat with wood exclusively, but I think as I get older, I might add a propane backup because you come home and sometimes it's cold. But in general, my house. So the deep freeze last year. I was gone for 3 days. I went to Florida. I thought I'd just go to Florida for a few days. I came home. My house was 32 degrees, but that's without any heat, and it was in the single digits. That's not too bad. So that thermal mass heats up with the wood stove, and it's like a battery. So I like a lot of concrete, especially around your wood stove, down low, down next to the earth, or stone. It doesn't have to be concrete. It could be any kind of earthen thermal mass. Waste. A lot of people, that's their big hang up, what to do with your waste when you poop. Composting toilet's the easy one. You can build them, square boxes with a little toilet seat on top with a 5-gallon bucket. Or you can buy a composting toilet that costs like $1,500 or more dollars.
We need more. Can you talk more later?
If you guys want to have an open space, when the nature walk is supposed to happen,
thank you
we have
guys.
open space at that point, so we could definitely have a off-grid set one. If there's a need, we're going to try to fill it.